You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a trunk, just like Jim. It's more to life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more to life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, like some bottles, impress them girls. It's more to life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And we're back. We're back with some main course. We're gonna be going into Saints free agency and some other news and notes. This is to compile a lot of news and notes. Free agency period's a good time to do it, and with how the Saints have been here lately, I feel as free agency in the off season is maybe more exciting and more enjoyable than the regular season. But we got quite a bit to get into just with the some additions, subtractions, and just additions, subtractions, and re-signings by the Saints. And then some other news and notes. But anyways, let's get in. Let's dive into this right now. So can I get a menu? And so just want to go over additions first. So the first day of tampering period, the Saints didn't tamper or let anybody know that they'd signed anyone. But like 10:30 in the morning or something, they traded for Devin Gotchu from the Patriots, a nose tackle, which is a big help, a great help. I think they traded like a 7th-round pick for him. So I seriously doubt you're going to find a starting quality nose tackle in the 7th round of the draft. So the Saints are making their moves to try to help build Brandon Staley's defense. So Devin Gotchu, I think he played at LSU, and there's quite a few of these other players that they've added or already added to the team or have a lot of Louisiana ties. So that's nice. That's something we haven't really seen. We didn't really see in the Sean Payton era. But yeah, I love seeing that. So the Saints have some a nose tackle, and then they already had some guys on the team like Nathan Shepard, Colin Saunders, the rookie that they drafted last year. So they had some options at nose tackle, and adding Devin Gotchu, who's making $9 million this year. I would expect that's definitely an opportunity to start. So that just gives the Saints like flexibility in the draft because they have like I think they have like 5 picks almost in the top 100. Like their last 4th-round pick is like 112. So they have a lot of high and quality draft picks through the first 4 rounds. So adding a nose tackle now makes it to where you don't necessarily are going to have to draft one in the first 4 rounds with those first 5 picks of the Saints. So I like that, and he started a lot of games when he was in New England. All right, so that's the first free agency move that the Saints really made. That really wasn't a free agent move. That was more of a trade than anything, an off-season move. And then the big splash that came on day 2 of the tampering period was Justin Reed, safety from the Chiefs, who is expected to make 10.5 million this year, which that's a lot of money. That's quite a bit of money for a safety. You know, a lot of people felt as if like the safety position's kind of been underappreciated. So that's a big contract for that. But I think that helps the Saints because they lost Will Harris. They're not sure how much longer Tyrann Mathieu is going to play, and I don't know how much they trust Jordan Howding. So once again, just kind of like the Devin Gotchu signing, it gives you flexibility. So the Saints don't have to take a safety. You know, that'd be really a high place to take a safety at number 9 on the 1st round or in the 40s in the 2nd round. So that's a good signing, and that's probably the splash play of free agency for the Saints. You know, you're hearing some kind of rumblings about Cooper Kupp. I don't know if that'd really be a splash play because he's 31, will be 32 by the season starts, and Justin Reed is 28 years old in his prime, having played in three straight Super Bowls for the Kansas City Chiefs. So bringing him over here into this secondary, he knows how to win, which I like that a lot. So let's move on to the next two here, though. I think the Saints have only signed like three more players. And shout out to Over the Cap for these good graphics and charts here. I think this one's a little bit behind. I got one player that's not on here, but the next player that the Saints signed, which I think this was yesterday. This was Thursday. They signed Jack Stoll, tight end from the Dolphins, and there's no cap numbers or salary numbers for him yet, but I would imagine it's some veteran, close to a veteran minimum. And because he's 27 years old, so he's in his prime, but he's never even had like 200 yards receiving. So he's almost basically an extra offensive lineman. Great and on the offensive line and great blocking in the run game. So I mean, the Saints needed that. Saints can need any bit of help that they can get on the offensive line or in the run game. So I like that, adding a big run blocking tight end and Jack Stoll. And I mean, I imagine it's probably at veteran minimum somewhere. So it's nothing to get too upset about in regards to spending salary or burning any salary cap on a blocking tight end that the Saints seriously need, because you don't know exactly where when the season starts, where Foster Monroe is actually going to be in his healing process after blowing his knee out on the last drive of week 18. And then the last player I got on this chart here, because we got another one on my own list, hasn't been put on here yet. We have Isaac Yadam, Ike Yadam, who played for the Saints in 2023 and had put up good enough numbers and spot starting and special teams that it earned him a contract with the 49ers. And he basically went on to the 49ers and basically had a pretty similar season to what he had with the Saints previously, being real reliable and spot starting as a corner, but also like really good in special teams. So the Saints need that. They need with no Adebo and no Marshawn Lattimore. They need the secondary depth, and this gives them flexibility. I know he's not like a starting like number one corner. So it might not keep you from maybe taking one in the first two rounds or so, but it helps. The depth helps. So now your main corners, are Alante Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Rico Payton, and now Isaac Yadam. So, not as great as maybe we were thinking that they were going to be to start the season last year, but it helps. Every little bit helps. It helps you be flexible in free agency. So those are the free agents that's been added to list. There's one that was just added. He's swirling around on the Twitter feeds as a player that the Saints just signed, and that's Jonah Williams, who started like every game. I think started every game for the Rams like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and he's a defensive end that the Saints signed. And I imagine that's probably some veteran minimum because he played sparingly the last 2 years for the Rams and the Lions, I believe. But he fits that mold that the Saints need for the bigger defensive ends. He's not a defensive tackle, but he's a big defensive end. He's like 6'5", 270. So he's like your run stopping defensive end in a 3-4. So we're just from these picks, you see the Saints are kind of slowly trying to build Brandon Staley's defense and make it to where it's flexible, whether they want to go offense or defense early in the round. So just adding depth is a big help, and that's what really kind of killed the Saints last year, is because they had all these great starters with historic and great careers, but they're old. And then once all those guys got hurt early in the season, they didn't really have any great backups or decent backups to hold the fort down while they were gone. So I like it. Depth is you need depth in the NFL. All right, so those are all like the additions for the Saints. I'll just go over like two of the biggest re-signs and maybe explain them a little bit. So the biggest re-signing of the offseason for Saints players, you had Chase Young and Juwan Johnson. And I mentioned that Justin Reed, uh, who who looks to be like our biggest free agent splash at like 10.5 million. You have Chase Young coming in here at like 17 million. But the thing that is kind of hard to explain or hard to understand with all these cap nuances and stuff. I mean, it would have hurt the Saints more. It would have cost the Saints more in cap space if they didn't re-sign Chase Young, if they didn't sign Juwan Johnson, who's also expected to make 10.25 million this year himself. But the way the Saints have like constructed these contracts, they put these void years on the end of these contracts. So like Chase Young had void years on his 1 year contract, and if it was gonna void, it was gonna him being a free agent and playing with another team in the 2025 season would have still cost the Saints $9 million, 9-10 million. And the same thing with Juwan Johnson. I know there's a lot of people out there that aren't a huge fan of Juwan Johnson and don't think he really lived up to his second contract. So they were kind of tentative to give him a third contract. But I mean, if you didn't re-sign him, he'd have been playing. You'd be paying him anyways, and he'd be playing for someone else, probably Sean Payton. And if my statistics and numbers are right, I think Juwan Johnson had his best season receiving. He had like 500 plus receiving yards. And I think he was the Saints' leading receiver last year. I just think from a couple of years ago, he had like 7 touchdowns. So people remember that and liked him more because of that when he only had like 3 this year. But these were just almost like necessary moves to not have to eat dead cap for players that are going to be going and playing on other people's teams. So I'm okay with that, and I'm also okay with just getting Chase Young re-signed to this team because I think he'll fit in very well as the outside linebacker, edge rusher, standing up the majority of the time. I think he's a perfect fit for that. So the Saints, there for a minute, I was feeling like as if the Saints didn't have any pass rushers, any edge rushers, any out 4 outside linebackers, but you got a cornerstone in Chase Young. I know he didn't have necessarily the sack numbers uh, that everyone was wanting, but he put up the pass rushing numbers pretty much everywhere else. You know, the quarterback hits, the pressures, the almost sacks, and I feel like he was still coming off that neck injury to start the season. I thought he was starting to really kind of come on at the end of the season. So those are the Saints' two biggest re-signings. Let's see about teams that have signed Saints players. So we mentioned Paulson Adebo. He went and signed a big contract with the with the with the New York Giants, and I think there's a lot of Saints fans and Saints media, social media people that were maybe expecting the Saints to try to re-sign Paulson Adebo, or were them wanting the Saints to re-sign him. But I mean, coming off of a broken femur and pretty much leading the league in defensive penalties since the day he was drafted. I just don't. When the report first came out, it was like 3 years, 3 years, 30 million, which made it look like it was like 10 million per, which that kind of had me a little upset. I was thinking like, oh, maybe the Saints could have paid him that, but then there's the actual contract came out and showed that they're paying him 18 million a year. The New York Giants, they have to pay that shitty team surplus tax to sign a Paulson Adebo, who was on some of his Twitter and introductions to the New York Giants like press conference, talking about being a number one corner, going to be their number one corner, and how he embraces that. I mean, he was never really the number one corner in New Orleans, and you saw him get picked on, and the Saints lose some games last year before he went down with the broken leg on pass interference and holding calls at the end of the game. So I'm perfectly fine with the Saints not signing, not giving Paulson Adebo, a guy coming off of a broken leg and who's a penalty magnet, for 18 million. I maybe would have considered it at like 8, 10, but not 18, not literally like twice as much as I was originally reported. And then we mentioned Will Harris, Justin Reed kind of replacing Will Harris, who I like Will Harris. If nothing else, we'll always have the memory of him jacking up. You got jacked up moment where he hit CeeDee Lamb in the end zone, knocking the ball out and having CeeDee Lamb kind of crawling around on the ground for a little while after taking a big hit from Will Harris. So I liked Will Harris. I thought coming in as a cheap signing last year, he played well and well in a lot of starting roles. Basically, he uh, ten, penciled out a starting role for himself. So that's some of your secondary players. Let's see. Oh, and then you have Peyton Turner, uh, edge or defensive end, coming, who was the first round pick out of Houston like 4 years ago. He's going to the Cowboys, and I don't know why I feel this. I feel that this is very similar to like the Zach Bond signing for the Eagles last year. I just feel that Peyton Turner is going to go to the Cowboys, and he's going to become DeMarcus Lawrence. That's what it feels like because Peyton Turner, he's very kind of was very similar to he's to Marcus Davenport. He was kind of like Marcus Davenport light. Like he hardly ever played due to injury, and then he didn't really get a lot of snaps. But man, he would make some highlight plays. Blocking a game-winning field goal against the Falcons, ruining the Atlanta Falcons season by jacking Kirk Cousin up and hurting him and basically flushing their season down the toilet. So I just feel that's one to keep an eye on. The Saints didn't bring him back. Maybe he doesn't necessarily fit the 3-4 defense they're trying to move to, but I just feel he's going to end up having a good season with the Cowboys. Just a change of scenery is always good. And I mean, he played college in Houston, so he's I guess knows Dallas. So that's really the one that's almost worrying me more. It's kind of weird that I would not overly worried about the Paulson Adebo one, but I just feel we're about to see Zach Bond 2.0 in Dallas. And then really the best player that they lost from last year, and I'm really surprised they didn't make a stronger and a bigger push to try to sign him, and the one that's got me a little heated out of all these is MVS, Marquez Valdez Scantling, the Saints. He came in with 7 games left in the season for the Saints and had almost 400 yards and like 7 touchdowns for the Saints. And the Saints just weren't able to re-sign him, and he's going to the Seahawks now. And so that leaves a big opening for the Saints. Talking about depth, that makes it to where you're flexible, are able to be flexible in the draft. Not being able to re-sign Marquez Valdez Scantling definitely hurts them in that position and at that position, because you got who you got Rashid Shaheed coming back from a knee, and then you got Chris Olave coming back from the chronic head injuries. So yeah, the Saints should definitely be looking for a wide receiver. Continue to maybe look for a veteran one in free agency, and now definitely one in the draft. So that's kind of the Saints additions, subtractions, and re-signs. There's a couple more, but nothing that's probably more than like a veteran minimum here. So now then, let's move over to something else I was about to start ranting and raving about before I got on this podcast, and that was comp picks. So just like a couple days ago, comp picks came out, and I think a lot of Saints news people, Saints media people, social media, they were expecting the Saints to maybe at least get a seventh round, maybe two seventh round picks, and they didn't get any from the players that they had lost in 2024. And I was just trying to make sense of it. People were trying to say, well, the Saints replaced Zach Bond with Willie Gay. Oh, okay, I can understand that. The Saints replaced Malcolm Roach with Chase Young. Okay, I understand that. That makes sense. And then the one that just was ridiculous and didn't make sense because Isaac Yadam, who's back with the Saints now, he signed with the 49ers for 2-3 million, and people were trying to connect Cedric Wilson Jr. to him, who was like veteran minimum for the Saints, like a fifth, sixth string camp body wide receiver for the Saints, and that was what was taking away the Saints' seventh round comp pick. Like I don't know, I was a little heated. I had me uh, made it a little hard for me to sleep and understand how Cedric William Jr. canceled out Ike Edem. But I guess the NFL for once in their existence have had admitted that they made a wrong calculation. And so the Saints are actually getting that seventh round pick. They're getting number 254 of the seventh round, which is the second pick before number irrelevant. So it's not much, but it's more than a kick in the butt. So I'll take that seventh round pick that we were expecting. So so it was Willie Gay replaced Zach Bond, and then Chase Young replaced Malcolm Roach, and then no, Cedric Williams Jr. is a nobody. All right. So now the next thing is, and this is the last thing, we've been hearing some rumblings about the Saints looking to try to add a veteran receiver. We were just talking about that, and there's several on the market, and the one that we've heard the Saints name come up about here in the last couple days is Cooper Kupp, who was just recently uh, released from the Rams, and he has such a similar kind of eerily similar type of kind of like career path almost as 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 Michael Thomas. Might not be quite as bad because he's played more games in the last 3 years than him, but it's the same in regards that he had like a historical triple crown season, and then he's never really been the same since, which is just like Michael Thomas. He had 149 catches and then had that ankle Achilles injury week one against the Bucks in 2020, and then just was never the same. And that's kind of what you're seeing here from Cooper Kupp, who people think the Saints might be interested in, which with the type of cap that they have, I just feel that any of these other teams that really want him would be able to outbid him, and him playing for a winning organization almost his entire career. I don't know if he would even want to come to New Orleans, and that's so they don't have the money and they don't have the team, the organization at the moment. But he's never really been the same since the Triple Crown season where he had 145 catches, 1,947 yards, and 16 touchdowns. That's just nuts. That's like one of the best wide receiving seasons of all time. And then they capped it off with a Super Bowl win. But since then, he's only been averaging like what a little like about 750 yards and about 6 touchdowns a year, and about 65 catches or so in the last 3 years. So, and he's only played in about a dozen of games each year, averaging about 11, 10 games a year. So I don't know if the Saints need to add another injury-prone wide receiver when they already have Rashid Shaheed and and Chris Olave. But The excitement. That's kind of what free agency is about. You're excited about these new names and these new additions and the potential for them making your team a Super Bowl contender with the Saints. Just a playoff contender would be nice, but I don't think giving Cooper Kupp a bag to come in and play in like 12 games and have like 700 yards. I don't think it's worth it. When I personally I would prefer the Saints to sign Amari Cooper instead, honestly, because he's a year younger and he's not as injury prone either. And in his last two seasons, in 2023, he had a Pro Bowl season with the Cleveland Browns. He had 72 catches with 1,250 yards and 5 touchdowns. And then last year he got bounced around a little bit, played in just 14 games, had 44 catches, 547 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, very kind of similar numbers, but definitely been a lot healthier uh, than um, than Cooper Kupp, and it is a year younger, and he has rapport. He has a familiarity with Derek Carr. They played together in Oakland. Him and Michael Crabtree had a good duo, a good trio there for a while. So I'd prefer Amari Cooper. And if it's not Amari Cooper, then I would even go Keenan Allen, who's like the same age. He's like the same age, or maybe see, is he the same age? He's actually a year older than Cooper Kupp, so he's the oldest of these three. But I would say that he's probably been a little bit more durable, and he's familiar with Brandon Staley when Brandon Staley was the Chargers head coach. And the main thing with these contracts from Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen, I don't think they'll be as big as what Cooper Kupp's going to get. But I honestly label and list these guys very similar. I don't think you're going to get really much different um, production from any of these three guys. So I'm perfectly fine with going with one of the cheaper plays and players that are familiar with our quarterback or are familiar with their former head coach, current Saints defensive coordinator, and Brandon Staley. And Keenan Allen, he played in 15 games last year with 70 catches, 744 yards, and 7 touchdowns. The Saints could definitely use that. And just with Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen, and even Cooper Kupp, having these guys come in and having a veteran leadership, and I don't know if any of these three guys can help Chris Olave learn how to take a tackle or how to get down or how to protect himself, but it would be beneficial. I don't see why it would hurt to bring in one of these veteran receivers. And just like we've stated about a dozen times now, if you add one of these receivers now, then it gives you flexibility because maybe there's just one wide receiver worth taking in the top 10. So if he gets taken before pick 9, do you really want to kind of reach for one at the ninth pick? Not really, but if you add one of these guys, you really won't have to worry about it too much. But that's free agency, man. We're in the heart of it, looking, hearing breaking news sirens on whether the Saints are making a trade or they're making a big splash in free agency. Seems every year people think, oh, the Saints are so over the cap and aren't going to be able to make any free agency moves, and they just need to sit on their hands and tear everything down and have a 2-15 season and get the number one pick. Nah, that those thoughts and those moves and that type of attitude just isn't in Mickey Loomis's wheelhouse. And I know there's a lot of people that have gotten kind of tired of him and stuff, but in years past, that's the kind of stuff that people loved about him. And if nothing else, it at least makes the off season and free agency exciting. So I'm fine with that, and it gives us content and news to break. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?